everybody wasn't everybody was not always functioning from a balanced perspective. By and large, many of them were not functioning from that perspective at all. But the story speaks to us because we are in that position where we are, um, where we want to be balanced. We understand enough of enlightenment that we understand that when we are, um, um, that the human who is Elohim um, is balanced and coming from a perspective of beauty and compassion and love, that affects not only the physical world, but it vibrates and resonates mightily in the spiritual. So what we're learning is that we've got imperfect folk in the lineage of the Messiah, and we're learning that we can put that in perspective and know that until we are enlightened, until we know who we are, we function from that perspective too, imperfection. The difference between someone who's perfect and someone who's not is that the perfect being understands who it is, understands that it must resonate in accordance with the Creator. That does not say it always does, but that's what the perfect being. But the imperfect being does not know who it is. Or if it does think it knows who it is, it cannot attain that in and of itself, even though it tries through money, through religion, through drugs, through whatever, apart from understanding its intricate connection to the Creator and not having that awareness, it's imperfect. And so that's what we're learning from this lineage, that heretofore we've all fallen short. We've all had our ups and downs. And today I'd like to talk about a couple of those ups and downs, if you will. But before I get started, I'll see if there are any questions, and not necessarily about what we've been talking about, but about anything. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none? Am I safe to say that? Then let's take a look at a couple of things. Yesterday we talked about the tribes, the 12 tribes, and we talked a little bit about their character. We talked a little bit about the blessings that Jacob gave to them on his death when he was dying. We talked a little bit about some of the places they may have not landed but been inherited in Canaan. Today I'd like to talk about a couple of things that answer the question, is the Messiah coming from enlightenment? And can the Messiah, or any of us, if we've come from a place of quote unquote unrightness, can we become right? Well, the answer to that question, let me see if you guys can, anybody want to take a stab at what I'm saying, looking at Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob? Hello? Are you guys with me?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I just want to make sure. We saw that there were times when uh, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob um, exercised some uh, caution, for lack of a better word, particularly when Abraham told um, Pharaoh and Abimelech that his wife was his sister. Uh, Specifically, when Isaac told Abimelech that his wife was his sister. Particularly, example is when Jacob and his mother Rebecca tricked his father and her husband Isaac into um, giving Jacob the birthright. All of these are areas where there were seeming areas that didn't quite line up with, okay, let's do the right thing all the time. And the issue is, it depends on what you define as right. Excuse me, not right, ripe, R-I-P-E, right. So there's a difference between what we call R-I-G-H-T today, right, versus R-I-P-E, rightness. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Give me some comments regarding that. What, if any, is the difference? Pardon? Okay, what, if anything, is the difference between right and rightness?
The difference in that is when we talk about something being R-I-G-H-T, right, it's based upon our desires, our opinion, and it's based upon how we see things through our eyes. Because what we see as being right with one person, we don't see it with another person if they're close to us, not close to us. Rightness is when we become spiritually enlightened. It's when we are no longer allowing ourselves to be duped by those who have manipulated us about what is spiritual and what isn't. And at the point of rightness, it doesn't mean that you are totally enlightened, but it means that your eye has opened and you have the opportunity to become ripened. That's my stab at it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else? So, when you look at what Rebecca did in gaining the birthright for her son, was that right, R-I-G-H-T, or ripe, R-I-P-E?
I say it was rightness.
All right, R-I-P-E, N-E-S-S.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does everybody see where I'm coming from in terms of what's right and what's right? Or
If I'm sorry, did I interrupt someone?
no?
If you in using that particular example, what Isaac desired to do was right, R-I-G-H-T.
Right.
He was doing what was lawful. He was, so you could not blame him for what he was doing, because that was what he had been taught to do, and those were the expectations for the elder son, and how those things were to be handled. Rightness supersedes that. It is doing what, as Pastor said, what is spiritual, and sometimes that is not observed through the same lens because you're looking through the eye as opposed to the eyes. So there is a difference, a big difference between the two.
Thank you, and I appreciate that that example of rightness, even in that one example of Isaac versus Jacob and Rebekah. And the point I'm making is that there are things from an outside perspective that don't seem to be right, R-I-G-H-T. But from the spiritual perspective, when we see it with the eye, the spiritual eye, there's a readiness, there's a rightness. Whatever is done, it's time to be unfolded. It's time to be. So that's one of the things I believe that we've seen, and when we've talked about this entire journey in search of, and this journey is about our consciousness, about becoming more and more enlightened. But that's one of the key kinds of things when we look at things, when we discern, we have to look at rightness versus rightness. Now,
may I interject?
Go ahead. Sure.
Based on what you're talking about, when Abraham told Abimelech that Sarah was his sister,
mm-hmm.
he was right, R-I-G-H-T, and he was right, R-I-P-E. He was right in that they had different moms but the same daddy. He was R-I-P-E in that if he had not said that was his sister, then not only did he run the risk of being killed, but Sarah would never receive the handmaiden Hagar. And if there was no Hagar, there wouldn't have been an Ishmael. So the rightness of it was orchestrated by the Creator to bring into existence Ishmael for some future things that the Creator had already set in order. Make sense?
Yes, that resonates. So there are things that happen that when it's done for the reason of rightness, it creates much more potential than rightness does necessarily. Let me give another example. Judah, the son of Jacob, I think it was the fourth son, born of Jacob and Leah. When Judah married the Canaanite woman, Shua, and had two sons, well, really three sons, Onan and Shelah, I think. And those, got married, died. Onan married his brother's wife, died before any children were born to either one of them in that line. And Judah promised Tamar that Shelah could marry her if, in fact, she waited a while in her father's house and that he got a little older. But if you recall the story, he never did complete this promise. He did not give Shelah to the Tamar to marry. And so what happened is, as you remember, Tamar heard that Judah was in town, my words, and she went out and she covered her face and sat beside the road. And covering the face was part of the tradition at that time for them, an indicator of a harlot or prostitute. Anyway, Judah went in with her, and she became impregnated but she asked Judah to give her something, so that when the time came, well, anyway, she got I think it's Judah's insignia and something else from him. And when the time came and she was delivered, and Judah heard through the grapevine initially that his daughter-in-law was pregnant by someone, he was angry and would have had her punished. And when he talked to her, she said, the one who is the father gave me these. She sent those tokens to Judah, and that's when he realized that he had impregnated his son, daughter-in-law. Well, out of this impregnation, she had twins. The first one was Perez, and then she had Zerah, I think is his second name, but Perez is one of the ones who he is in the direct descendant line of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Judah. So here's another instance of seeming action that you asked the question, was it right? Well, according to the traditions at that time, it would not have been. Now, the tradition was that the son could marry the widow of his brother if the brother had not had any children, in order to continue the lineage. But that was the right thing at that time. But a father-in-law having a sexual relation with his daughter-in-law at this time was not right, R-I-G-H-T. Well, here's the question. Was it ripe?
Hey, Barbara.
Yes, sir.
This is Charles.
Yes, sir.
A question was asked, and I'm gonna bring it to the day. Like Narelle probably can get into it and expound on it. They was married, the cousin, the sister-in-law, and brothers, sisters. Why is that then and different now? And I know Deuteronomy have a little bit to say to it.
Well, part of the reason why it's different now is that if you remember when we're talking about the times of Abraham, the issue was to begin to populate the earth. I mean, you can even go back before you get to Abraham and look at Adam and Eve, and there was lots of intermarriages between even brothers and sisters early on, and part of it was the part of the procreation, the fact that they had to begin to populate the earth with someone. Of course, now there were some people about, even outside of Adam and Eve's two initial sons before they had Shem. But as we move through history, our culture also helped to define what's what and what's right, R-I-G-H-T, and what's not. Our laws that are perpetuated also define that as well. So it was a different time, Charles, than it is now. But if you remember, even now, you've got the folk who are in the Mormon, Utah, who have more than one wife. Or some of them in some areas have more than one wife even now. And some of them might marry sisters, even now. Not their own sister necessarily, but sisters. So I'll stop rambling here and see if someone has additional comments.
I guess, Margaret Sharon, and my take on that is we were talking yesterday or Saturday, I don't remember. Pastor, you or Pastor was explaining what an allegory is, right? So I look at this as not to be taken literally. Maybe, and it's just a maybe, or maybe it's a spiritual truth to show that this is showing people who are like-minded spiritually, or like-minded, or in their pursuit of truth, and not necessarily to look at it as, for lack of a better term, incestuous, because he says to go and find, looking at the situation with Abraham and Isaac, go to my family, go to your relative's house. So I don't want you marrying these people who don't have the same values and morals and the same relationship with the Creator, or they don't know the promise. They don't know what God has said to Abraham, or go to them because this is the same spiritual DNA, maybe. I don't know. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective. I don't know if, from a spiritual perspective, if that is what is being said here, that this is, I'm marrying my sister or sleeping with my. Does that make sense at all? I don't know.
Oh, I mean, that resonates with me. You want to pull from something that is known in terms of values and attributes and attitudes versus Canaanite, the Canaanite, quote unquote, Canaanite women that you know worship idols, blah 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 blah. Pastor.
Yes, ma'am. When I hear you talking and reading that scripture, that's what Paul was talking about when he was talking about not being unevenly yoked. He was not talking about somebody being a Christian and somebody not being a Christian. He was talking about those who had no desire to be anything spiritual. It didn't matter who it was. It was not a labeled religion. It was spirituality being yoked to religion. That's what Paul was talking about. The next thing, when one of the things that caused me to look real carefully at the Levitican law was this. The Levitican law says that a brother cannot uncover the nakedness of his sister-in-law. Yet, this is what happened here. What am I saying? I am saying that the priests who read these scrolls made it up as they went. And if these laws that were written in the Leviticus, in the book of Leviticus, for example, if they were to be laws that came from our Creator, if they were kingdom principles, they never would have changed. Because kingdom principles don't change. They read an allegory and they wrote a law opposing what was being done there. I agree totally with Ron that it's an allegory. And may I further say that the Bible deals with the good, the bad, and the ugly, meaning the priests were no different than preachers who wrote doctrines. They were no different than denominations who write doctrine, the do's and don'ts. Yet, when Jesus appeared on the scene and said that he came to rightly interpret the law, he was talking about the Mosaic law. Because if he had been talking about the Levitican law, he could not have legally spoken to the woman at the well. Neither could he have forgiven the woman who was caught in sin and they were about to stone her, and based on what they were about to do to her, that speaks to the idea that she had been caught in adultery. If Jesus were abiding by the Levitican law, he could not have said to them, if you're without sin, then cast the stone. He could not have said that. So what I'm saying in essence is this. When the allegories are clear, when we read about the Abraham, the Isaac, the Jacob, the Isaiah, the Daniel, when we read about them, it's a clear allegory. When we read about Leviticus and parts of Deuteronomy, we see the priests who had taken liberties to write what they thought ought to be as opposed to what was supposed to be. And if there is anyone on the phone who is confused by that, please hear this. The Levitican law says that a woman can commit adultery, but a man can't. So if there is balance in the kingdom, that cannot be true. So the adultery issue had nothing to do with individuals. It had everything to do with being adulterous in terms of becoming yoked to religion as opposed to spirituality. I'm done.
Thank you, Pastor Charles. Where are you at?
I'm still here. I hadn't left.
You understand?
No.
Yes, sir. The question was for someone else, and I had to, bring it forth so I can get clarity on it.
Okay.
So you're gonna be able to respond to them when they ask you a question about it, in terms of.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
And thank you.
Yes, sir. Is someone else going to say something? Okay. Let me continue on. And what I'm trying to do today is just show you that through these stories, because the stories are about us as well. Through the stories, we are learning that there is opportunity for light in everybody. We're even going to talk about Rahab a little bit. But coming down the line, Perez, who was Judah's son by Tamar, is in the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But if you come further down the line, you get to Boaz. He's the son of Salmon. And Boaz married Ruth, and Ruth was a Moabite. And when you think about Ruth, the story has it that Ruth is from the lineage of Lot's relationship with his a first daughter, his oldest daughter. And so what I'm attempting to do is show you that even out of perceived darkness, or something that cannot be explained, or something that's not, quote unquote, right from our perspective, there is light in everything. And so Boaz marries Ruth. You know that story, I believe. If not, you could take a look at it. This is when Ruth followed her mother-in-law, who was a Canaanite, I believe. No. She was an Israelite, and he followed her back home, and Boaz was there. And Ruth decided she would go with her mother-in-law. Where thou goest, I will go. Where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people. That whole idea there. But from Ruth and Boaz, you had Obed, Jesse, and David. David, the king of the Israelites. Then you had David and Bathsheba. And Bathsheba, David saw her bathing on the rooftop. This was not his wife at the time, but he subsequently married her further down the line. And David and Bathsheba had several sons. Solomon was one, blah, blah, blah. Nathan was one. Nathan is the son of David and Bathsheba. And Nathan was also listed in Luke 3:31 as the father of Mary, the mother of the Messiah. So my premise here is that there's always opportunity for light to be exposed. And that when people say evangelicals, whatever, you got to be like Jesus, you got to be, you got to do this and you got to do that. They have to understand that the story is about opportunities for people to reveal the divinity in themselves. And it's not that everybody did that all the time. Then you have the story of Rahab. And you remember the story of Rahab, where Joshua sent the spies out into Canaan, and Rahab hid them. Well, it is said that Rahab and Salmon were Boaz's parents. This is from Matthew 1:1-5. So again, out of all of everything that's happened, out of perceived attributes of jealousy, anger, wrath, all of those things, there's that opportunity that the Messiah was born, Jesus was born, to pull all that together, to show us how to be balanced, to show us that we don't have to go through all of these machinations in terms of perceptions of the world we live in being dog eat dog, or the perception of the world that we live in that this is the real world. The Messiah, out of all of this, was the seed to show us that there is that opportunity for anybody to be redeemed. Anybody can be redeemed. I didn't say some people, depending on the condition. Anybody has that opportunity to be. redeemed, meaning having the divinity that they are be shown to them so that they become aware of it. Questions?
Barbara.
Comments? Yes.
Yeah, this is right. While you're talking, a couple of things came to mind. This has been some years ago when I remember I used to come up to down to Columbia, up to Columbia, to Bible study, and I remember Nick said one day, and it may still be written on that board: set your intent and let it be.
It is.
That has been freeing to me over the years, because not always my decisions and actions have come out like I would desire them to, and sometimes you find yourself in a pickle, but at the same time, my intent was not to, was without malice or trying to deceive anybody or take any shortcuts. So that has been something that I never forgot and been a driving force with me. And it just come to mind when you said that, when you talk about all these characters or characteristics of personalities that have shaped where we are today. The other one that comes to mind to me is when God had the priest, I can't remember his name now, but to go and look at Jesse's sons. And they brought all these boys out, and he said, but God looks at his heart. So we see all these things and pulling all that together. What you're saying, the line is not always straight, but the outcome and where you end up or what happens from it and your attitude on it. Whereas here I am. What do I do with this? What do I learn from this? Where do I go from this? As you're saying, any and everybody can reach this place or that place where you're one with the Creator, based on your desires, based on your heart, based on what your intents are. So the path, your actions don't always come out the way you may plan them to, or it's especially in the eyes of others. But it depends on who you are in your search for truth as to where you're going to end up or how you're going to end up in the end.
Yes, and that's the thing about truth. It unveils so many potentials. But when we do things on our own, we sort of lock down the opportunities and the potential because we are operating from the physical, finite arena, rather than opening ourselves up to the spiritual, which has unlimited potential.
Yes.
Pastor, you were going to say something.
Yeah. Suppose that you said that the line is not always straight. Suppose that the line for every man is straight, meaning that if they follow that line, regardless of where it carries them, they'll end up in the same place. It may be that the person is a drug addict. That's what gets his attention. It may be that the person has killed someone. That gets his attention. So, to us, the line is convoluted. To the Creator, it's a straight line. Now, I'm not justifying the what we consider to be negative or bad behavior. I'm not justifying it, but I am saying none of us know why a person goes through what they go through and end up where they end up. Why does a man beat his wife? Why does a man or a woman rob a store? And all of a sudden they wake up. What do we say? They got jailhouse religion. And it's exactly that. And the reason they have jailhouse religion, or they have they come out of drug rehab and their drug of choice become religion. Why is that? So could it be rather that going through that avenue that led them to drugs woke them up to a spiritual thing, like they have a spiritual awakening, but the only thing that was presented to them was religion and not spirituality. So is that person in a better place if religion is their addiction as opposed to the drug? We would say that religion is the better choice because they're not doing drugs. But both of them are addictive, yet they do not result in the same type of behavior. So is the problem the choice between drugs and religion, or is the problem the addiction itself that keeps you blind from spirituality? That's a question being posed. And even though I call Ron's name, it's not just for Ron. I just want to get some clarity.
I say the addiction is, what you say the addiction is what?
Is the addiction worse? Is the addiction the greater problem, or is the results of it, be it drugs or religion? Is the addiction to religion a worse addiction to drugs?
Probably about.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be probably about the same because both of them you're in bondage?
Okay. Anybody else?
And you can't seem, people can't seem to find a way of escape. Regardless of where they go for teaching, it's like they're fighting a war within. So to me, it's about the same. And then you're sitting in a religious setting, and you're not growing. You're just stagnated. So you're still in bondage.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else?
Sage, this is Vermel. I think that religion would be the worst bondage to be in because it's soul deep and it keeps perpetuating the abuse and bondage of whatever the drug of choice is, be it drugs, sex, anything else.
Huh? Thank you. I have a reason for having asked the question. Anyone else?
I believe what she just said because that was the first thing I was going to say is religion, because religion, that's what got people steep in the things they in now. Excuse me. And sooner or later, if that person is on drugs, sooner or later, he gonna understand there's more to this than that.
Thank you.
But if you go to church and trying to get the seed light, they gonna keep showing him darkness. So he gonna realize that he gonna realize it himself.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Anyone else?
Let me add something on to what I was saying. Remember when I talked to you about the young lady that was called up before the church, and she came in drunk, had been drinking, and you could smell it on her, but she was signaled out from everybody else. And I don't know if it's the way it was done, if they thought that calling the person up was going to free them, because they wanted, people, the ministers to lay hands on them, and the ministers wouldn't. And so the state that she was in bondage when she come in, and she, having her to give her testimony like it was setting her free, and she didn't receive anything spiritual from that because her mind was just totally, she said, what am I supposed to say? What you want me to say? She asking the pastor, what do you want me to say? So she was still in, it was in bondage when she came, and she was in bondage when she left. And she didn't receive anything spiritual that religious spirit, to me, is like it attached itself more, because to me, and this is me, it was like, because they called me down, I'm free. When she really wasn't, she was still in bondage by that religious setting.
Thank you. Like when you go up to get saved, simply because they say you saved, right?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
The reason I asked the question, is there anyone else? I'm sorry. The reason I raised that question is because Barbara was talking about, and Ron was talking about, the characteristics that are in these allegories, the characteristics of the people, or the names of the people, rather, in the allegories that we are studying. If we look at them, what we actually see, I think, is that out of all what we see as the convoluted journeys that people have, whether it be through prison, whether it be through murder, whether it be through whatever, out of all of these convoluted journeys, the worst place to end up is in religion. Why? Because it is more difficult to free someone from the bondage of religion than it is to have a drug addict speak with you, someone who really want to be free, and you teach them the truth. It is easier to speak to them about the truth being on drugs than it is to speak to them about truth being steeped in religion. You can talk to someone who is not steeped in religion about the idea of water baptism not having any effect whatsoever. The baptism is supposed to be by the Spirit, and it comes from embracing Jesus. It's easier to do that to someone who is not steeped in religion than it is to someone in religion. And some of the things that we are seeing, it is easier for someone who is not religious to embrace them than it is for those who are steeped in religion. Does that make sense?
It does. I can see that. Yeah, and I've yeah, you see that too. I guess I have examples of that on my own just from talking with people. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I see that from the story of Abraham, from the story of all through the biblical stories, particularly when the people came out of bondage and they just circled around for 40 years. It's like they were trying to catch up with knowing who they were, putting off the bondage and the thoughts and the ideas of the gods, of the Egyptian gods, all of that stuff they had to get out of them and out of their consciousness, so that they again could seek and be aware of the people that they were, in following the true God. So it's the same thing that, we have diversions today that and distractions that keep us away from becoming consciously aware of who we are, because we think those distractions are real. We think the diversions are real, and we get our emotions and things tied up in them that we lose sight that we are not our bodies. We're more than that.
I know this right here is in the Bible, but I don't know where about it's at. Jesus was healing, or Jesus was doing something, and this man said, "I did all these rituals. I know them." And Jesus knew where he was coming from, so Jesus told, "Give your money away." And he couldn't do it, so he walked away. That's how I see it.
Okay. That's how I see it too, Charles. You're not going to give up your material possessions in order to wrap your mind into our embrace spirituality.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Barbara.
Are there other comments and questions tonight? My primary goal tonight was for us to discuss rightness and rightness, so that we would see that they are not the same, and that you can see instances of what seemed right even in the stories that we read, the allegories. But there are instances of what's right. What is right propels us forward in terms of opening up ourselves to the Creator and who it is and who we are. What is right doesn't necessarily do that.
Barbara, this is Charles again. When you were saying that, now, can right be everyone is all together on one accord, and they believe in that, and they trust that, and you sitting there having this urge within saying, I don't know if I could trust what everybody's saying in me, and it's deep in me, I don't feel it. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the right part there of not trusting what the whole crowd is saying. And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Finish up. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I was done.
It depends on what the crowd is saying. If the crowd is saying anything that is contrary to the fact that you are Elohim and you're one with Elohim, it might be right in the crowd because they're all saying it, but that's not the truth. And so that may be the dis-ease in you that, hey, they're saying something and I know better. I know with my my spiritual eye, I don't see this the way they are seeing this with their physical eye. So that might account for some of the dis-ease as well. So I think I hear what you're saying as you relate that. You don't go along with the crowd just because the crowd is going somewhere. It has to be, what is it? Where are they going? What are they saying? What does it mean? And is it in alignment with what you know as an enlightened person, what you know to do?
True.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Good evening, Miss Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Thank you so much for sharing the lesson. I just enjoyed, and it really resonates with me. And I get it. Believe it or not, I believe I get it. The thing that I have, and I think that was Ron, kind of alluded to it. Well, he did say it about the intentions, and I think you also mentioned that. If it wasn't yesterday, it was Friday, about the intention. So the thought I had is, how do you know when something is right or when it's ripe? And it sounds like, or it seems like, time will tell. If you are doing something with the intentions, with the right intentions, it will work out, because it will eventually be ripe if it's not, doesn't appear to be ripe in the beginning. Because when you look at Esau and Jacob, I'm sorry, wrong brothers. But when you look at the brother Isaac and Jacob, that's still wrong. It's Esau and Jacob. I'm sorry. When you look at Esau and Jacob, it did not appear that what mom was doing was right. But as time progressed, it became ripe. The Creator had already spoken these things. Rebecca understood it, so she really was justified. In our lives, the only measure that I'm thinking that we have, and I want some feedback on whether our choices are right or ripe, are based on the intent. If the intent is pure, it'll work out, and if it's not pure, it still may not work. It may not work out, but still, that might be the way to go. Because when you look at the things that have happened in your lives and all the circumstances and the obstacles and challenges and all this kind of stuff, it didn't seem to be right, but in time, it ended up being ripe. And it got you to where you needed to be today. So I don't know. What do you think on that?
Well, Mary, for those of us who are enlightened, meaning we understand that we are Elohim, that we are the human, and that we are one with the Creator. Motive and intent is very important. And if the motive and intent is to be in accordance with what the Creator wants us to be, and that's our desire, you're right. It doesn't matter how it looks, how whatever circumstance looks like, how a distraction looks like, whatever our motive and intent, as you say, if it's pure, if it's for the sake of showing loving kindness or sharing for humanity, regardless of what we see and the obstructions put in our path, it's going to work itself out, because our vibrations are in line with the vibrations and resonance of the universe. And when we set our intent, and we maintain that intent, the universe does everything it can to ensure that it comes to pass. So I tend to agree with you. Motive and intent from a pure heart, from a position of loving kindness, is always something that we desire to do and to put in the macro, so that the universe, then not us, the universe, the Creator, has the material it needs to bring it to pass. I mean, we've already put the word out there. That is already the word is the fire, and all we're doing is waiting for it to manifest itself. Other comments about that?
Barbara, Ron, again, I think you and Mary both hit it right on the head, motive and intent. Something I want to add, I'm not quite sure, maybe somebody can help me pull this together. A lot of times, what our goals are, motive and intent. We have the right motive to do things, but a lot of times, in the middle of what we're doing, it may include materialism. It may include maybe it's, the goal is something that we have set that does not materialize, and we think it's a failure. It's not a failure if you look at it from a spiritual perspective. For example, I'm as educated as anybody, but at my age, I would have thought I would be at a better place materially. My goal for years have been to understand truth and know who I am and know what's in the book, and we've moved that even to look at me getting over my some of the hurdles to include everyone in loving kindness and letting that be my motive, and being forgiveness is my motive. So on that regard, my intent has been fulfilled or is being fulfilled. From an earthly perspective, materially, it looks and even sometimes feels that I'm lacking, and that's not the truth. So I've learned, or I'm learning rather, to look at this from a different perspective, because sometimes we look at this thing, at the wholeness of your life, and you don't separate that part out, and it looks like part of this failed. But that's not the case if you can see it through your third eye and not look at what your goals were as opposed to your motives and intents spiritually. And I hope that makes sense.
Mary?
Yes,
It does, man.
Yeah, it makes sense, because a lot of times we don't really know what we need. But I thought about what my mom used to say: it's not like a peace of mind. You may not have what you think materially available to you, but you have that peace, that reassurance in knowing who you are. And all those other things will come as you need it. You're not wanting or lacking anything. You just, it's just amazing. And the question that I have is, and I'm thinking that it's not up to us to say whether something is right or ripe. It's up to us to do what is pure and honest in our hearts, and let the Creator do what it needs to do with the decisions, the choices that we've made, is what I was thinking. But you're right on it. I agree.
Thank you, Ryan. Mary. Also, remember, ripeness also has to do with something being with right time, right place, uh, for instance, there's a time when you can say something to someone that if you said it in one period of time in their lives, they don't receive it. But there may be an opportunity where it's the right time and the right place for whatever it is you would share with them would be something that they receive. So rightness has to do with being able to discern that, and sometimes rightness has to do with not saying anything if it relates to a relationship with someone else, a sister, brother, husband, whatever. The right thing might be not, depending on the circumstance, not saying anything, as opposed to a month from now, the same kinds of opportunity opens itself up, but you have sensed in you, you have you perceive in your eye, with, as you say, with your third eye, that this would be received. So it's the right time, right place. And when we are aligned with our Creator, when we are in tune, in vibration with, resonating with, that leaves us open to being able to do or say what's necessary at the time to whomever it's necessary. If you understand what I'm saying. In other words, you don't allow the physical circumstances to do that. You allow this resonance in you, this deep feeling of agreement with the Creator that, okay, now's the time to do or say something. Now is the time. So it's not only up to you, it's what I'm saying. You don't have to depend on your five senses in order to choose rightness and unrightness. You don't have to depend. As a matter of fact, if you depended on your five senses, more times you're going to get it wrong than right, or more times it's not going to work itself out. When you don't depend on your five senses and you choose to depend on that connection, that tie, and that knowing, and being open to what the Creator says, as you say, it's going to work itself out regardless of what happens. It will work itself out. So motive and intent are key kinds of things. And if the motive and the intent is to stay connected, to remain aligned with, to remain in resonance with the Creator, whatever it is will work itself out.
Thank you so much. That's a big help. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. Other questions or comments?
Why do the words say the righteous man availeth much?
It says the effectual fervent prayers of the righteous availeth much. I believe it says.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it does. So
that's in James, I think. James.
Yep.
Somewhere in there.
It's in. So if you understand that scripture, it's actually saying that whatever a righteous man meditates on or about, it comes into being. It avails much. It changes things. Sometimes it changes things and we don't even know it. I saw something yesterday. I think yesterday when I was talking with Ron and Kathy. I said something. Something hit me like a ton of bricks.
It didn't hurt you, did it?
Yeah, it did. It hurt me, but I healed myself because I'm a physician. You know that scripture that we had that we were looking for, the where in Isaiah it said that the Lord said to Cush, I will bring you back to me, even if I have to bring you across the waters in chains. You guys remember that? Please acknowledge.
Yes, sir.
Well, you remember that we could not find that scripture in the Bible now? You acknowledge that, having looked for it and can't find it?
Yes.
Do you know why?
Yes.
You know why we can't find it? Because we are changing the world. We are creating a new world. We have created a world where being brought in chains across the waters in order to get back to the Creator, that world does not exist anymore. Because it wasn't because of what we knew about the Creator. It came into existence because of our desires for mankind. Our desires for mankind brought all of that, created a world where none of that exists. And currently, we are creating a world where not only slavery, but racism doesn't exist. And I do believe that the Creator allowed me to see that for us to understand that regardless of how much time it takes, it is necessary for us to continue this search, this journey, because Cush has already come back to its Creator. Cush has come back to Yahweh. Cush has left Yahweh for Christianity, Islam, the other stuff. But Cush has come back to spirituality. And because of that, the Cushite has changed the world. Let me read this if I may. In Isaiah 11:11, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand, that's his authority, again the second time, to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. Every one of those names of people are Cushites.
And that's Isaiah what, Pastor?
11:11. Every one of them came from the Cushites, and that is something that we hold on to. Why? Because these allegories are Cushite allegories speaking to us about our responsibilities for humanity or to humanity. We who are traveling this journey are responsible to humanity to open the eye of humanity in order that humanity might see who it is. Mankind is blind, and it doesn't know its way. Why did that happen? if you think about it, if you take a people and you put them on a ship in chains, and they are stacked like sardines and chained to the ship, and they traveled 3 months plus from the coast of Africa in their own excrement, in their own vomit, never changing clothes, never bathing, just given enough to eat, stay alive, and are not allowed to speak their language, not allowed to worship their God, to hold on to their spiritual beliefs, not allowed to continue their culture when they hit land. All of these things stripped away. All of them are stripped away. We have come across the great waters. That's done. So it's not in the scriptures anymore. It is not necessary. Now, we have come to the place that the Lord has set his authority on us for the second time, and he is recovering the remnant of his people. Any questions about that? Does that resonate?
It does.
If there is not understanding, please ask the question. Because if we can wrap our minds around this, then I do believe that it would be a lot easier for us to understand, for us to embrace that the allegories of the Cushites are simply telling us what our characteristics are and helping us to see, regardless of the journey that one takes, that one is still worthy of knowing who he is. It matters not what has been done to you. It matters not what has been said about you. The one who said it, the one who did it, needs you. And we are responsible to them. The fear of the African by the Caucasian is simply the Caucasian projecting on the African who it is. Afraid that we will do to them what they did to us. But they don't understand that we came from the womb of the African woman for the purpose of creating a kingdom on earth as it is above. And there is nothing in our DNA, spiritual or physical for that matter, that will allow us to be as vicious as they have been to us. It is their fear because of what they have done. It is their projection because of who they are. So I say to you this evening, what is being laid out before us is necessary if we expect to see balance in this earth. The Creator has already shown us that we have begun to build a new world by virtue of that scripture being missing from the scriptures. And all of us, for the most of us, if I taught you, we read it. And it's not there now. That's speaking to us about who we are and what we have accomplished because of the depth of our desire and because we were determined to overcome any obstacle that was placed in our pathway. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Unless there
I'm done too. Yeah, unless there are questions, comments. I think I've explored where I intended. I put it that way, of the stories. So, are there any questions or comments? Okay, well, that will do it tonight, folks. Hope you guys got something that spoke to you. Because if it doesn't speak to you, meditate on it, and it will. That's what truth does. Just don't let it hit you upside the head too much now. Just be open, and it will speak to you. So that's it for tonight. Thank you all for your comments and your questions, and for your attention. No other questions or comments?
Thank
See you guys later.
Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.